Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Be the Wolf. I am here with Chase Tucker, who is also a friend of mine and a wonderful human being. You know, it's so funny when we meet people along our business journey and we get to step and check in with each other over time. It's so cool to watch how we all grow. And that's one of the coolest things about entrepreneurship is we are all on this growth path. Whether you're growing personally, professionally, your business, it's all interchanged, all combined. So Chase Tucker is a former Peloton instructor turned CEO of his own boutique style health and wellness company. He and his team serve CEOs, celebrities, and executive women that are juggling business and marriage and motherhood while still trying to find the time to prioritize their own well being. I know a lot of people out there, women and men, can totally relate, but we today are going to talk about overcoming the hump of building a team. And Chase spent the last year really refining, building his team. And as we know, as entrepreneurs, anytime we do something new in our business, there's going to be some ups and downs, some learning, some curves. And we're going to talk about that stuff today because it's such an integral part of your business. And we're going to talk about what Chase had to do to really cultivate that A team. Hello, Chase. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm blessed. I'm healthy. I'm alive. I'm just grateful to God for another day.
Beautiful. So, before we dive in, is there anything else you want to add to what it is that you do and how it is that you help women?
I am simply a servant of the highest health and wellness of and performance of the women who are like my mother, who do it all. And I specifically say like my mother because my mother's the only woman who I've literally known my entire life and spent the most time with, and then been best friends with for as long as I can remember. She's the one who I've just the biggest heart to love and to serve and to care for. And so witnessing her challenges within her day-to-day life and within her health and fitness routine while balancing marriage, motherhood, business leadership, community leadership, and servants service, it's given me a beautiful, unique insight that most people, not even the women I serve, even have themselves because they are in it
Yeah.
and they don't have the opportunity to observe from the outside and see their own blind spots and opportunities to bridge certain gaps. So that's what I do for the women that I serve.
And so I always like to talk about why we do what we do. And I know your mom
Mhm.
plays a big role in that. What is another aspect that really lights you up about what you do?
There's no limit to what I can do to serve my clients because it's just a matter of there's always a constraint, whether it's within their weight loss. Initially, that's usually what it is. That's what gets them to really realize, it's not until they see the weight accumulating on their bodies and they look in the mirror time and time again and they realize that they're heading on a trajectory towards a way of life that they really got to make a choice. Is this the way of life that I want to live? Often my clients, they come from an athletic background. They come from a background of being the one in their family who was different while all the rest of their family might have indulged in and other health habits that didn't necessarily support their best longevity and health span and lifespan. They were the ones who broke that chain, right? And so they didn't often they don't have that model of what optimal health and longevity looks like. And so they're the ones who are really crafting this new lineage, this new legacy of health and wellness. But inevitably they hit a plateau at a certain point because they hit perimenopause or menopause and what they used to do doesn't work anymore. And so they've reached a point at which them being their own health and wellness strategist is no longer it no longer makes sense because it's above their knowledge level. And so I say that to say that what excites me is that no matter where they are on their journey, there's no limit to how I can serve them and support them. And what really excites me also is that as soon as they start seeing a little growth and a little progress in an area, they just light up and they get so excited to create more wins in other areas. I have one client, for example, she's a vice president of a well-known company. And I happen to have my calls with her after my French lessons that I have every week. She's like, you know what? I, I don't have enough hobbies. I don't have enough passions. And it's not her fault. She was thrust right into being a mother, being a wife, jumping into the workforce really made it difficult for someone like her to have a season to explore her own passions, her own hobbies, her own desires because she was so focused on everyone else. And it's just opening her up to new ways of having much more fulfilling role. We're talking about how she can install new rituals and rhythms with her children of going to museums once a week or going to art exhibits or going to things that she was always wanted to do, but she literally didn't feel she had the capacity for. She didn't feel like she had the bandwidth for. She didn't feel like she had the energy for. It's literally changing lives, not just of the women who I'm impacting, but their children. I love being able to stand in the gap and share like, no, 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 there's a different way. I'm living proof of that. And let me show you what is possible for you so that not only just children who you love more than life itself, they can have a mother who's truly present, who's pouring from a full cup, not from an empty cup.
So, this last year, you took the time to put together a team so that you could slide more into your zone of genius. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs who are in the beginning stages of their business, this is the part they dream about, but they don't realize that that comes with its whole next set of challenges. Every stage of business comes with more and more challenges. And this is part of why we grow, or at least our first business, we grow our business step by step because you've got to get a handle on each set of challenges as you go. So, first of all, what was it that drove you to know that it was time to bring in a team to help you grow your business instead of just you and your initial assistant?
So I remember having a conversation with someone, with a friend at a business funding event, and we were talking about assistance. I was like, how am I going to know it's the right time? He's like, trust me, you'll know. And that stuck with me. And I was like, well, man, I feel like I don't want to wait until it's like overwhelming to have that. But I also do kind of think it has to happen that way because until someone pushes to that extreme of reaching the full extent of what they're capable of on their own without a team, one, they won't truly know everything to hand off to or expect from someone else that they're handing those tasks or responsibilities to. And then two, even more importantly, I think, is that they won't truly appreciate it. I think it's only when you experience the pain and the sting of really being stretched beyond your capacity. If you don't experience that, then you'll never actually truly appreciate like what they're taking off your plate. And as a result, you'll never be able to show that appreciation accordingly.
Yeah.
And as a result, that person will never fully feel like they have ownership, like they're fully appreciated, like they are fully settled in, because you in your own mind will always be questioning, do I really need them?
One of the things that I really love about what you said is that you think you kind of have to wait until you hit that place of overwhelm where you have really pushed your limits. And the reason I like this is because there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there who will try to hand off and bring on a team so early in their business. And what this often does, it will have you spending money before you actually need to spend that money, which,
Mm-hmm.
of course, if you're bringing in a lot of money, that sounds great. And also, it's so important for a business to not just be like, oh my God, I have all this money, so let me spend it on whatever. But the bigger reason I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't want to actually do the work. And so they have these ideas about freedom and just being able to make a lot of money without doing a lot of work. And so they will, as soon as they can afford to hire people, they will do that. And it will bite them in the ass later because, again, you need to grow at the pace that you're growing and you need to fold in the things as you need them. So I love that you hit that point and then you knew it was time to expand, as well as the appreciation piece. Again, those people who are just trying to offload the work because they're not willing to do it themselves, those people generally are the most unappreciative employers out there. And they're the ones that most micromanage their team and are the hardest to work for because nothing tends to be good enough. So you knew it was time. You had reached that max point. And what you've talked to me about a mentor of yours who gave you some really good advice about attracting A players. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so who you're talking about is my business mentor, Keith Cunningham, who I'm grateful to my shout out my performance coach, Jarek Robbins, who introduced me to the work of Keith Cunningham and was the only reason that I even found out about his first business learning event that I ever attended. Keith Cunningham is, you may not have heard of him, but you definitely, a book that wouldn't exist without him, which is called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and which is one of the most top ranked finance books out there. And
Mhm.
the character of the rich dad is based on Keith Cunningham. The reason I love him as a business mentor is because his wisdom and his teachings, and he's written different books. Like one of his books is The Road Less Stupid, which I love that title. But he instilled into me the concept of A players. I've not just listened to and just like, oh, that's cool, I'm gonna hold on to that. But I applied it heavily, not only to my team, but to myself. And so there are 6 traits of A players. I'm not gonna get into all of them, but he's got a few different sayings. And so one of the things he'd say is A players, there's no problem so big or no obstacle so great that it cannot be overcome by the right team of A players.
Mhm.
I'll say that again. There's no obstacle that is so great that it cannot be overcome by the right team of A players. And so when he said that, I don't know why, but like that resonated as such truth for me. And it made much peace because it simplified everything, because it made me realize there will always be constraints, there will always be obstacles. But no matter how big it is, if I am the right A player and I surround myself with other A players, there's really nothing we can't do. And so that's
Right.
one of the things he said about A players. Another one is that among the 6 traits of A players, A player has a high internal emotional need to succeed. They don't need to be pushed. They don't need to be motivated. They don't need to be poked and prodded to succeed. They're the way they're wired on the inside, it won't let them do anything other than succeed. Right? It's who they are, right? It's just a part of their nature. Number 2 is A players are like that straight A student in your middle school algebra math class, is that they can't wait for report card day. They cannot wait for report card day, which by the way, that was not I hated report card day. The cool thing about having growth mindset is that eventually, no matter where you are, you learn eventually that like, I I think I like winning and being successful more than I like limiting myself and running away from truth. So eventually I started appreciating more quote unquote report cards and being more in line with the A player. Another trait of A players is that A players, they are humble and seek out every opportunity possible to learn. They love learning. A players love using scoreboards and scorecards, and they love having eyes on the scoreboard and seeing, are they winning? Are they not? If so, if they're not winning, how many points do they need to score to win? They love having eyes on the data, on the metrics that show objectively if they're winning or not. Like the worst thing for an A player and you'll know if you're an A player if you listen to this or not, is that the worst thing ever for an A player is to be playing a game, any kind of game, and not see a scoreboard and have no clue if they're winning or not. They're like, hey, are we winning? They look at the scoreboard and say, winning. They have no clue whatsoever. And often what that looks like in business for myself, and I've also had to learn how to be somebody who can lead them, because A players do need to be led in a specific way. And one thing I've learned is that A players will quickly let you know if they don't have a scoreboard. If they're like, I don't know what to focus, I don't know what is past priority, I don't know if I'm winning, if I'm losing, and it doesn't feel fun, right? So those are a few things about A players. Keith would say, he's like, I don't know about you, but if I'm picking some guys for a basketball team, a team of 5, to go toe to toe, head to head with another team of 5, I'm not picking 4-footers, 5-footers. I'm going for the Michael Jordans. I'm picking 5 Kareem Abdul-Jabbars. I'm picking 5 LeBron James. And he's like, are you surrounding yourself? And this is the compromise that a lot of people make. They'll just take whoever they can find for that season, and they quickly find out, wow, I didn't really have a standard or a filter for A players. And as a result, I've let in some C players. And C players, funny thing that he would always say is C players see problems where A players see opportunities.
That's a big one.
Right? A C player has a problem for every solution. And I'm not saying this in judgment, by the way. I'm not saying that C players are bad people or that they're not worthy of being given a chance to change and grow and learn. I've been that C player myself in the past. In school, I was not an A player. I love learning. I love reading books. I was the biggest bookworm that I knew, but I just was not super interested in school. Like, it just was not, it didn't seem really the most for me. And so as a result, when it came time for report card day, I was just like what he says C players do, which is they don't want to see how well they're doing, because they actually prefer not to know. Then it exposes the mediocrity or the averageness that they're walking within. And so those are some, just to give you guys an idea who are listening, of what A player means, at least in terms of like where my business mentor shared with me, because that's probably one of the most powerful frameworks that he's shared with me, because it's given me a standard to for myself to just make sure that I'm upholding and living up to, so that then I can better recognize A players, invite them onto my team, and then consistently give them a path where they consistently feel like they're being developed and appreciated for what they are. An A player they might come with a cost of, financial. They know what they're worth, and so they won't allow themselves to be treated like just anybody. Right. But when you learn to appreciate an A player, and you learn to be that A player and learn to appreciate the A players around you, you'll actually quickly realize that one A player is worth more than 3 C players. But 3 C players will cost you more than one A player ever could.
Yeah.
So
totally. Okay, so one of the things about attracting an A player, because you've got to be somebody that these A players want to work for and work with. Absolutely. So in order to do that, you have to become the A player. So a lot of entrepreneurs were not necessarily the best in school. I was really good in school, but most entrepreneurs were not, because they were busy thinking about other things. They were learning different ways, daydreaming, all kinds of things. Yes. So now to become an entrepreneur means you subconsciously signed up to become a leader. And so not only do you need to know how to treat your A players so that they get those metrics and those things that they need, that they feel valued, and everything that they need to continue to stay motivated. You said they were self-motivated, but you have to lead also by example. So you have to become that A player. Sure. And in the beginning of entrepreneurship, most entrepreneurs are not an A player yet. And so let's talk about some of the things, we've talked before about some of the things that you had to overcome in order to be an A player. Let's Are you willing and able to go down that path?
100%.
Awesome. So one of the things that you said before is healing the self-talk. And I think most people, entrepreneurs and other people alike, know that inner critic, that negative self-voice. So what did you do? How was it affecting you? And how did you heal it? How did you not let it run the
Right.
show anymore?
It's a great question. How did I heal the inner critic and not let it run the show anymore? Well, first thing I'll say is that as a leader of faith, I've learned the inner critic will go by many different names, but I just call that the voice of the enemy,
Mm,
because in that voice of the enemy is something that we've all on some level been calibrated and conditioned to accept and agree with some of those thoughts, whether we hear it from parents, from bullies, from people outside of us, or just whoever it might be. But it's voices that and things that beliefs that we've not necessarily been even necessarily been taught, but we've caught it from around us, right?
yeah.
But it's all just it's the enemy, right? And by that I mean it's like if you were to say those thoughts out loud, that's not how God would talk to you. That's
Mm,
not how the creator of the universe who loves you and knew you by name before, like way long before you were born. It's not how he has ever, would ever, or will ever speak to you. If you really are an entrepreneur, really a leader, then that means that you're always on this constant journey of expansion and aggressively so, because you're always having to stay ahead of the curve, ahead of the people that you are leading, so that you can continue to serve and inspire them at a high level. Have you ever heard the quote like or the phrase "different level, different devil"?
yeah.
Yeah. So I believe in that fully. And so I think that at each level of growth requires that you again acquaint yourself and see yourself through God's eyes. Otherwise, the alternative is that you look at yourself through the eyes of the enemy or the eyes of your own negative ego. Sure, that ego might serve you in some ways, or it might feel like it serves you in some ways when you're taking ownership over everything and it's all about me and like I'm the one who's doing things. But then you live by that sword, you'll die by that same sword, because when things go bad, you're going to judge yourself the more harshly than anybody else, than your worst
Yeah.
enemy even would, right? Because your worst enemy wouldn't even doesn't know your
Right.
deepest darkest secrets, but guess what? You do, and so you'll quickly find out that you will become your own worst enemy unless you learn to look at yourself and view yourself through eyes that are not of your own, that are not your own, that are not human, that are not conditional, but that are eyes of your highest self from heaven's eyes. And so for myself, it's been imperative that I start every day from that lens. And so every day it's a part of my just daily routine that among things that I do move my body every day, every morning. I do my conditioning, my strength training. We're spiritual beings having human experience, but we still have a physical vessel that
Mm,
will affect my spirit. And I definitely make sure to consume consume the light every day. I read scripture. I listen to and read devotionals. I allow in the mornings only the most pure words and information and most uplifting messages to enter my ears, my eyes, my mind, be spoken by me. I read them out loud as I consume them. That's something I didn't necessarily do early on in my journey. I think that part of me also liked using that fuel of beating myself up because I was used to that. I would look at the past and like, oh, the best times that I perform best are when like I'm beating myself up or I'm talking crap about myself. So I was like, maybe that's a good thing. And there's a lot of people, you'd be surprised about how many people are at high positions of power and in high leadership roles, and they still are using that
uh,
stick to beat themselves to get
abs-
there and beyond. But it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost, and that cost is it's a lot of things, but it will definitely cost your ability to even enjoy the journey anymore. And I'm the kind of person who I made a commitment to myself from the very beginning. Like, if this isn't fun, if this stops being fun or enjoyable, like I'm not doing this. I'm not going to enslave myself or chain myself to a life just because I have to do this. It has to be something that I'm enjoying, that gives me life, that is rewarding, that's fulfilling. And also, I can't pour purely and lovingly and from a place of light and love when I'm treating myself like crap, because I can never love some other people at a higher level than I'm loving myself. And so It's mission number one for me to love myself and immerse myself in the most loving teachings, wisdom that remind me whose I am, how loved I am, how much compassion there is for me, how much grace there is for me.
There's
So,
a couple of things in what you said that I just want to take a moment and point out. One, I love the concept of like, how would God speak to you? And looking at it through that
Mhm,
lens. And, this could be the universe,
mhm,
the creator, it could even be your mother if your mother was a loving being. Also said you had talked about how C players see problems. So if you're sitting there constantly negatively beating yourself up, you're focusing on problems as opposed to the A player is looking for the opportunities. And so when you're beating yourself up or you're doing the negative self-talk, that is all the problems, the problems, the problems. And then the other thing I wanted to point out
true.
how important it is that in the mornings you only feed yourself the most positive information. And this is important for those of you listening because you are the most suggestible when you first wake up in the morning and when right before you go to bed when you're kind of getting sleepy. So it is during those two
Yep.
periods of the day that is the most important time for you to consume positive, good information. If you're watching depressing movies and maybe war movies, things like that, right before you go to bed, it's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect how you wake up the next morning. So those two times of days are really important for what you're consuming as far as information, the words you're hearing from inside of your head or outside of your head. That if you're scrolling TikTok or whatever, make sure you scroll real fast past anything that might not be completely motivational and uplifting and positive. In fact, just don't scroll in the morning or right before you go to bed is an even better idea. So another thing that we talked about that you had to deal with to become that A player is nervous system regulation. I was just going to say, I work a lot with my clients on this, as well as the negative self talk, all of those things. But it's a really big, important thing. And it's a important thing for your clients as well, because stress fuels weight gain and non-optimal health. Tell me about your journey with nervous system regulation and what you have done to bring it more to a place of balance.
Yes. Well, I love what you just said about stress fueling weight gain and suboptimal health, because that's the thing that not just my clients I'm showing them, but I inevitably had to learn myself in deeper ways, as it was made evident when I was finding myself having nervous breakdowns or my own just poorly managed nervous system, just nervous dysregulation. And I'm grateful that at the time I was among individuals who were really sharing with me a lot of information around nervous system regulation. Eventually, I noticed a pattern because I was still at the time working out of that kind of shame wound. So I would attribute when I was having a dysregulated nervous system that would cause me to downward spiral and crash. I would have the shame and then pick my pieces back up, try again, but eventually I would notice a pattern like, like it's usually when I'm allowing myself to be cared for with my massages, with my breath work, with the things that are addressing my nervous system, that things tend to go awry, things tend to go south. And so I realized on a deeper level that like it wasn't just doing something and then checking off a box like, oh, that's good enough for me to address and regulate my nervous system. It's like every season brings something different, brings a different stressor. And then also if I'm always continuing higher levels of success, that means the stakes are going to be higher and higher. And so that means like this week, I might not necessarily have on a calendar view like doing a lot, but the stakes in I'm making are higher than they've ever been before. And so if I was
Right.
judging myself based on what was happening last season, I would make the mistake of saying, like, oh, I can go without XYZ. But no, I've actually doubled down, and I scheduled the massage for myself this Monday, this Wednesday, this Friday, because I wanted at the end of each of the days to place to land my nervous system and start the next day from that fresh place. That nervous system can constantly just feel cushioned and cared for. So I'm perfect. I used to feel like my clients see these things like, oh, that's not as necessary. I can like just grit my teeth and push through. And that's just not, it's just not possible. That's a very unsustainable way of seeing things and living. What I've learned to live from is a mantra that my spirituality coach really helped me familiarize myself with and then embody. And then I think about it even as I'm working out. It's you can do hard things in a calm way. You will meet hard things along your path in life inevitably. It's a fact. There's no way around it. You're going to find hard things, and actually, you should. It's not that you will find and encounter hard things. You should actually also be seeking them out to
Right.
increase your capacity to deal with the things that life hands you, so that the things that you give yourself, the adversity that you give yourself, is actually so great that it makes life's adversities seem like a walk in the park. If every single time you encounter something hard, you have to meet hard with hard, that's going to kick up your adrenaline. It's going to kick up your cortisol. It's going to be unsustainable. You're going to have a crash after every encounter. It's just what I teach my clients and what I live myself now is how to slowly but surely increase the load or the stressor, lowering the stress response that it's eliciting from me. And so the wider you make that gap, that's what your capacity looks like. And we've talked about this in the past in terms of like your electric fences, where if it looks like this and you don't have any capacity, you're going to feel like you have a very tight electric fence around you, and risk is going to scare you. You're not going to seek out any opportunities because they're going to be perceive it as a risk. You're going to try to stay in the same lane. You're going to try to protect the status quo. You're going to be very limited. You're going to have a very limited life, not expansive at all, very contracted. But the more that you train yourself to have a larger stress capacity, and you'll find that life is just so beautiful. I know this might sound counterintuitive to what I just said, but you'll actually find life isn't hard. You'll realize everything hard is just a series of easy things. And when you approach things in a calm way, you really see that I can calmly address those things one at a time.
And I,
But when your nervous system is hijacked, you just want to you just either want to run, it's fight or flight, right? And so, yes, I've had to learn a lot and make a lot of mistakes, but I'm blessed to say that I've made it to where I am right now. But I still got a lot to learn. Like just earlier this week, I made a nervous system newbie mistake where I like overdid it in my workout while under fueling myself, lay in my bed and just let myself come back down to normal, to the neutral state. And it took hours, and I was like, dang it. But like, I was like, hey, I'm grateful for this lesson, because if this can still happen to me, then it for sure is possible that my clients are around and expecting the most out of themselves while resourcing themselves the least and fueling themselves with nothing and skipping lunch and skipping breakfast and skipping, like, giving themselves nothing but expecting everything. So
we have this mindset, most people in general have this mindset like it's a race. Like we're running a short sprint race that lasts forever. And we think that it's bad. Somewhere along the lines, we have picked up this idea that it's bad to slow down, make sure that you're calm. I love that piece about you can do hard things in a calm way. And the way when you're increasing your capacity, it is this space where more and more things feel emotionally neutral. And so the work that you do to regulate your nervous system, however you do it, whether you like work with somebody like me or you're meditating or you're getting massages 3 days a week, however you're doing it, it is just so important, because when you are moving from stress, you're making poor decisions. You are taking it out on your team, which again, this conversation is all about being that A player for your team and attracting those A players. So I love this. And now one last thing that you had to do to really become the A player. You had
Mhm.
to heal the relationship with yourself, heal the anger, and forgive your dad. So, healing relationships in general, tell me, how has that helped you become an A player? Healing relationships with yourself, your dad?
How it's coming up for me right now is that there's another quote from Keith Cunningham, actually, which is the competitor with the least amount of blind spots always
Mm,
wins. And to rewind from that, a foundational statement that he likes to make is that business is an intellectual sport. And that's how he says that to then introduces this tool that I use myself and I introduce to my clients called thinking time, where I put them in the thinking gym. Because as an entrepreneur, you're not a labor worker. You get paid to think.
right.
But so often they expect themselves to just think on the fly. It's like expecting an athlete expecting themselves to just find time to lift a weight or something instead of like setting aside dedicated time to train. And so I train them on how to think of their best and brightest ideas using thinking time. But then that brings me back to, he says business is an intellectual sport. So we need to be in the thinking gym. But if you're in business, the competitor, if you think about sports, the competitor with the least amount of blind spots always wins. So if one team has more information than the other team and can see more of their blind spots and they can they can see theirs, they're gonna win, right? Because they'll be able to operate and take action in alignment with truths that the other team is not even aware of. Where the other team is operating outside of reality, this team will be operating inside of reality. So I think the reason that's coming out for me is because wounds, I think one way of defining wounds or unhealed trauma is blocks to truth or
Mm,
reality
mhm.
as they are really integrated into our nervous system, right? So the reason I feel like my healing my relationship with my father and healing those traumas, which, weren't just within my lifetime, but some were generational that were existed and were started long before he or I
Right.
was even born. I think that, and we actually, coincidentally enough, just had a conversation the other day about, we were talking about just trauma and like things that were happened with his mother, my grandmother, and she raised a whole parent household. She was raising him alone as a single mother. And she had a lot of wounds that she spilled onto my dad and hurt people, hurt people. And he was telling me about how he had to learn, he had to forgive her and choose to be different so that I could have a better upbringing than he had.
Right.
And so I think that how it's made me better is that I have more clarity on truth that otherwise would have been tainted by this wound. That otherwise it would have, like, I would experience something maybe in my day to day that would subconsciously triggering like how my inner child felt back when my dad said or did X, Y, and Z to me. But then I'm not aware of it. So I'm just operating from like programming that I'm not even aware of. But now, since that healing, I actually experience those situations and it's cool because I can see in my mind, I can say, like, oh, that's how I would have responded had I been triggered and had I not healed and done this work. But this is how I choose to respond because I understand. I have understanding. And with healing comes understanding. And it's amazing to me how the greater one's understanding, the harsher reality you can experience from just life itself or from other people. Like someone can be truly mean and like evil to you. Like to the point where people would think it's acceptable if you're just like wrong back to them or if you do something back to them, but you're just like, no, I understand. I understand where they're coming from. Like that's great. But then especially as an entrepreneur, if you can understand situations, understand mistakes that your team makes, or understand situations that were unavoidable and maybe they weren't planned for, but you have understanding and it doesn't just it's not you're not interfacing with it through a nervous system that's telling you that's wrong, that's bad, you're bad, like all these things, but you just remove all that and now it's just you experience it as is, as truth. You're just a lot more, you're free. There's freedom in that. And again, I think truly, I think the healing that I've seen happen with my relationship with myself, my father, would be impossible without God. Like we talk about all this, like we bring up. There's not a single conversation that can go by where we talk about those kind of things, like the growth and the healing, and like he even talked to me in our last conversation. We're like, yeah, man, I was telling your mom about our last conversation, and like, man, our son is just he's just growing so much, and he's just doing this and that, and then we bring up like, yeah, but only by God's grace. If we didn't have God in any relationship, if it's just one person and the other, that's just two strands. And a cord of two strands can easily be broken, but a cord of three strands cannot easily be broken. That's biblical. And so that means as long as God is the third party, and that means that anytime I'm pissed off or angry with you or upset with you, and I'm not talking to you, but I'm still like connected to and developing and cultivating my relationship with God with truth, love, and light, then that will be all that is needed for us to repair and heal again.
One of the things that I love about what you talked about the two strings, or like the cord between two people, and then the third person being God. When we're talking about a situation or a relationship or a situation that went awry and people have feelings about it, or they have hurt and they have trauma about it, you have, here's your perspective, and here's your dad's perspective. But then when we put in that third perspective, that's like, that's from up above, seeing it from a more clear place without being attached to the emotions of Chase or the emotions of Chase's dad, then it becomes a third perspective that you can filter information through and be able to come to a different understanding. And that ties back to the self-talk conversation where you were talking about how you want to look at yourself through God's eyes. So looking at, again, whatever divinity type of thing. And if science is your thing and you don't have spirituality practice, then looking at it through the objective eye is another way to look at it. So I love that you shared all this and how much it affects you showing up as a leader and as an A player for your team, because you are, yes, you're working for your clients, as am I. You're also working for your team. Sure, you're paying them and they're working for you in theory, but you are creating so that they have this place that they can be a part of something and create something. So on that note, I would love for you to tell all the people how they can follow you, how they can interact with you, how they can work with you. Tell us all the things, Chase.
Yeah, so the place that everyone can find me right now, that's the most easy would be Instagram.
All right, so hold on really quick. Everybody open up your browsers. If you've been enjoying Chase's energy, the things he has to say, the reasons why he's doing it, open up your Instagram right now and search Chase Tucker. Just like it sounds. It's an easy one. Okay, go on.
Chase like the bank, and then Tucker and like trucker, but without the R.
Yeah.
Yes, Instagram would be the easiest way, and we plan on being more available on other platforms. But to be honest, we're not about that the most right now. We're just really focusing on bringing the clients who we do have the best world-changing results. As being world-class, I have no problem being like the best kept secret. I have really been feeling led and called to just allow my focus and attention to be elsewhere within the business, just building the systems and the processes that are going to allow us to operate as a team at the highest level and serve our clients at a higher level.
And that's such a big piece of growing the business, bringing the team on, is prioritizing getting your systems in place. You're setting yourself up to scale. That's when you're bringing the team on.
100%.
Everybody, there is a ton of value. You just scroll Chase's page and there's so much value for you to look at and absorb. And I know if you reach out to him and his team via Instagram, they will connect with you. And yeah. So one more question, Chase.
Yes.
When you were hitting that overwhelmed point, when you're like, oh God, I got to start bringing on a team. I know you already had an assistant at this point. What was that trigger point that made you actually take the step to do it? What did you need to know maybe a little sooner before you did it to actually pull the
Right.
trigger and start the process?
So for me, the moves I make in the business have increasingly become, I know this might sound cliche, but I'm truly in this surrendered
Mm.
place across the board, not just in the business, but in my life in general, where when I get message or the assignment, but for me, it's a feeling. It's a gut feeling, but then also there's, as I become more spiritually mature and more mature in my faith, there's also been spirit confirmation that I'll experience. Tells me, yep, this is the thing. This is the thing to do.
Mm.
As soon as I experience that, I just take action. I don't even hesitate because I've learned just do it, just follow through. I was
Yeah.
talking about this the other day with my accountability coach and just telling her about how I got confirmation recently that I'm supposed to move. And this is between now and our last conversation, which happened the week before. And she's like, wait, just like that? Like just last week you were here and you were living one place and now you already decided you want to move. I was like, yeah, that's how it goes. As soon as I get the confirmation, I don't wait. And how I broke it down for her was that what's the only reason that you would not take that is because there's a perceived risk that XYZ will happen, right? There's a perceived risk of something bad that will happen. When I walk in faith and when I walk in this alignment, it always works immediately. It might take a day, it might take a week, it might take a month, but it always works out. And so that whenever I get that confirmation, okay, now this course of action is no longer the risk. Now everything other than this is the risk. This is now the only path that's safe, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I've learned to look at it. So similarly, that's how I apply it to my hiring process is, yeah, I'll get some logic reasonings of like why this person would be a great fit and everything, but then I journal. But for me, it really is more of like, I will think on it, I'll meditate on it. I will, again, immerse myself in truth, in the scripture, in the word, and devotionals, and things will just, that process that I'm in daily tends to push out the ideas that are not worth my time. So, yeah, makes things super simple.
Perfect. Yeah. And it's just that really beginning to trust that. Chase, thank
Yeah,
you so much
100%.
for sharing your wisdom and your information and your journey with us. And everybody, remember, when you unleash the power of you, humanity evolves. We'll see you all next time on Be the Wolf. Bye.